Good evening, everyone.
Good evening there.
Okay, Ellie, I think we're ready. Following the agenda. Thank you.
All right. So I will call this meeting to order and we'll start with a reciting of our vision statement. Every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. We have a summary of 10 written statements. There were 10 statements submitted from Friday, November 19th through Monday, November 22nd. One in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School to Memorial High School in support of the Memorial Committee memorializing one person per year. One in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School to Memorial High School. One in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School to Memorial High School or keeping it the same. One in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School, Madison Memorial High School. One in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School, Madison Memorial High School or Memorial High School. One in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School to Bruce Demin Memorial High School or Memorial High School. One in support of keeping the name James Madison Memorial High School. One in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School to Memorial High School or Val Phillips Memorial High School. One in support of considering the cost of renaming James Madison Memorial High School before a name change is done. And one in support of renaming James Madison Memorial High School to Val Phillips Memorial High School. We have one public comment speaker who is here in person, and I'm sorry, Barb.
Sorry, I thought we should do 1.3 before the public speaking. If we could.
Thank you so much, Barb.
Yep.
We'd like to ask for a moment of silence this evening to recognize the passing of 4 of our MMSD students. Simon Bailey, who was a senior at West High School. Celia Atkinson, who was an incoming junior at West High School. Jovan Freeney, who was a sophomore at Memorial and Capitol High School. And Diana Sanchez, who just completed her 8th grade at Whitehorse and was beginning high school at La Follette. The tragic passing of each of these wonderful students has taken a significant toll on so many of their classmates and staff, and we remember them tonight. Please join me in a moment of silence in honor of Simon, Celia, Jovan, and Diana. Thank you. We have one speaker this evening who is joining us in person, and we'll have that person speak first, and then we will have our folks who are joining us by Zoom speak, and they will be brought into the meeting by Barb Osborne. I'm sorry, I think I'm gonna butcher your name, but Chandra? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Chandra. You can start now.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to the community tonight, one last time before you make a final decision on the name of Memorial. I'm a 92 graduate of Memorial. My daughter is in the Memorial class of 24, and my son the class of 26. I would like to begin by thanking Maya Berry for bringing forward the proposal to change the name. This also like to thank the ad hoc committee for their time and discussion of this important matter. I virtually attended the last two ad hoc committee meetings. Before the last meeting, I read the written statements suggesting name changes. The community members strongly wrote in favor of changing the name. In fact, the two most popular choices the community wrote about were Bruce Downing Memorial High School and Memorial High School. There were fewer written statements in support of Darlene Hancock and Bell Phillips. At the last ad hoc committee meeting, the student representative stated that each time students overwhelmingly stated, why not just Memorial?
Ms. Muldrow? I'm sorry, I'm interfering because we cannot hear the speaker online.
We can't hear you either, Ellie.
Her mic is muted there.
Hey, Barb, I apologize about that. How would you like me to address the fact that you can't hear the person who just spoke?
So if I could, Brad Mackey is in the room, our audio person. If he could step forward and tell us what's going on at the
Right,
podium.
testing.
Okay, I can hear that now. Thank you. Okay.
Do you,
I'm terribly sorry.
she had just finished, so I'm gonna ask her to reread what
I
she
would
wrote.
appreciate that. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Testing.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to the community tonight one last time before you make a final decision on the name of Memorial. I am a 92 graduate of Memorial. My daughter is the Memorial class of 24 and my son the class of 26. I would like to begin by thanking Maya Berry for bringing forward the proposal to change the name. This was long overdue. I would also like to thank the ad hoc committee for their time and discussion of the matter. I virtually attended the last two ad hoc committee meetings. Before the last meeting, I read the written statements suggesting name changes. The community members strongly wrote in favor of changing the name. In fact, the two most popular choices the community wrote about were Bruce Dahman Memorial High School and Memorial High School. There were fewer written statements in support of Darlene Hancock and Bell Phillips. At the last ad hoc committee meeting, the student representative stated that each time she and her Memorial peers discussed the name change, students overwhelmingly stated, why not just Memorial? Bruce Dahman's widow wrote a statement to the ad hoc committee. While much of her statement supported her late husband's name, her first choice was simply Memorial High School. Later during that same meeting, the student rep also pointed to the fact that there are former students who had strong feelings for Bruce Dahlman and Darlene Hancock, and former students who had strong feelings against them as well. Indeed, high school administrators need to make difficult decisions that not everyone agrees with. Shortly after that point was made, it seemed Dahlman and Hancock were off the table. Because the written statements greatly favored Memorial High School over Val Phillips Memorial High School, my assumption was that the ad hoc committee would side with the community and bring Memorial High School forward to you, the board. Before I conclude, I want to say that I was very proud to hear on November 2nd that a statue of Val Phillips will be erected on the Capitol grounds. This is a rightful tribute to a remarkable woman. I have no ill feelings toward Val Phillips. With that being said, Board of Education, we the community voted for you to be our voice within the school district. I ask of you tonight to fairly consider all of the written statements in favor of the proposed name to Memorial High School. Tonight, vote for Memorial to stand alongside East High School and West High School to have a name unto itself. The name Memorial High School will memorialize all men and women equitably who have served this great community. March onward, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I believe that is the only speaker in person. We now can start with the online speakers, of which there are 4. The first being Ann Murphy Madison, who should already be in the meeting.
Hello, this is Ann Murphy. Can everyone see me and hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. I want to start out by just saying thank you to the board for meeting on this very important issue tonight. I am a parent of a current Memorial student, class of 23, and of 3 alumni. I am speaking tonight in opposition to the recommendation to change the name of Madison Memorial High School to Val Phillips Memorial High School. I am not opposed to changing the name from James Madison to a different name, and I firmly believe, and actually I want to echo the statement of the previous speaker, that the choice of Madison Memorial High School is the best choice for our community for several reasons. The first reason is I fully understand the opposition to using the name James Madison, but the name of the controversial historical figure, that can be dropped without changing the school's entire identity and causing confusion. Consider that Phillips is a town in north central Wisconsin, and there is a Phillips High School. Using the name Phillips will inevitably result in confusion about what school is this and what city is it in. Second, please consider that renaming our school Madison, which is located in Madison, Wisconsin, after a person who, well, she is an admirable and accomplished person. She is not from Madison, and she is a fallible human being. Using any person's name could result in controversy in the future. And I firmly believe that renaming the school after another person is the wrong choice, as recent events have demonstrated, because human beings are flawed and there is always the possibility that the name will someday become objectionable. Third, at the ad hoc committee meeting, which I listened in on, several members, including the two members who are actually a part of the current Memorial community, a student and a teacher, both stated that the vast majority of people that they had talked to at Memorial, other students and staff, etc., and alumni, wanted the school named Madison Memorial. The committee actually cast more total votes for the name Madison Memorial, including the first and second place votes. And I was very surprised when the motion was made to only present the name Val Phillips Memorial High School to the board, despite the fact that the name Madison Memorial had actually more total votes. And finally, the board must consider the cost to our school district and taxpayers. Changing the name will require a complete identity transformation, such as a new big sign above the name, above the school, new logos, uniforms. The list is require fewer such changes. Funds for changing all these things could be used for other educational purposes that would far better serve our community. And the proposed renaming of a high school and its implications are far different from renaming an elementary or a middle school. The identity of the high school is so closely linked to its name, statewide and even nationwide. The school is Madison Memorial. In closing, to avoid further controversy and division, I urge you to let the name of our school remain Madison Memorial. Thank you for considering my position.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathy Rezak.
Hello. First of all, I want to apologize for my voice. It's very strained and I'm exhausted. I'm here tonight to request a resolution to the confusion of my pay while I was waiting for COVID test results. I filled out the form that was linked in the email that I received from the district. In that form, there was a link for the FFCRA paid leave. I filled it out, as I know other employees have filled that form out while they were waiting for COVID test results, and they were paid with that leave fund. The response that I received when I filled out the form is this, and I quote, "At this time, you will need to use personal illness time for any COVID-related absence. When more information becomes available on COVID pay, I will update you." First of all, too, I apologize. I'm an employee with the district. I'm a special education assistant. I have sent several emails asking why I was denied this leave and have heard nothing in return. To me, this isn't a matter of the district deciding if they're going to allow these funds to pay their employees because they've already made the decision because other employees have been paid from this fund while they were waiting. Tonight, I'm respectfully requesting an answer to my question that I have not been able to receive an answer to. I want to know why I'm denied this paid leave when other employees have been paid that while they were waiting for their test results, and when will this be corrected on my paycheck?
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to wait for an answer.
We cannot respond to you at this time. We can have staff who can answer your question and respond to you.
All I've ever heard and all the emails is that somebody will respond to me, and nobody has responded. And this is why I am coming to the school board. If you can't respond, can you direct me to who can? I'm not getting a response. That's why I'm here tonight, is to respectfully request a response to my question. Why am I being denied this, and when will it be corrected?
Hi, Kathy. The director of HR is actually in the room, and she will be able to respond to you directly. But this is not the place for that. The board can't help you right here, right now, this moment.
Okay, can you tell me where the place is? Because I have sent several emails,
Yes.
and the only response that I get is that I would have to use sick time. And the other responses that I have received is that somebody will respond to me in 48 hours, and nobody does. So I really want a response.
I understand. I'm sure that we can rectify this.
I hope so.
Yes, we can, and we will. I promise you. We can be in touch with you tomorrow morning.
Okay, you have my email,
Yes.
and I will be waiting for the response.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Our next speaker is Becky Runo.
Oh, hi, everybody here and see, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to make a statement regarding the renaming of Memorial. I have 2 children who currently attend there, and I've been following the meetings of the Ad Hoc Citizens Renaming Committee. I appreciate all of their work through this process, but it seems like public views and opinions didn't always hold the weight that I would hope in a public school district. It also concerns me that the procedures and policies listed weren't always followed. I understand that any comments made on the renaming website and the feedback form were only going to go to the committee members, but it clearly stated that a summary of actual written statements that were submitted through the Board of Education's website would be read at the meetings, which didn't always happen. In fact, a member of the committee brought up reading statements at one point, and they were told that the committee members could all read them on their own, which to me, again, diminished the role of public input. It sounded like the committee was only going to present the single name to you for consideration when I watched the last meeting. The renaming website seemed to confirm it, since it only mentioned the recommendation in support of Bell Phillips Memorial High School to both the operations work group and then again when mentioning this evening's meeting. The guidelines in the renaming flowchart say that the CNC shall vote on a name and submit it along with the other names to the board. It goes on to say that the Board of Education will approve a name from the names, which is plural, forwarded by the CNC. If you watched the last meeting, as others have pointed out, you'll know there was also very strong support for Memorial High School. I feel that the shortening of the name to Memorial High School should still be considered. It seems like students and community members prefer this name for a variety of reasons. The main reason for me was one brought up by committee members. Naming schools after people can lead us right back to where we are right now, since you never know what might come up in the future. And honestly, most people already refer to it as Memorial, and that's not going to change. Unfortunately, since the information released to the public didn't mention how the alternate names should also be forwarded to the board for consideration on tonight's vote, most people I know thought tonight's meeting was more of a formality. This once again fails to consider the views of the public and what will end up being a very costly decision about one of our public schools. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak and bring up the concerns.
Okay, our final speaker is Sean Koval. Is that you, UW Health?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sean Koval, and I'm the Healthy Schools Coordinator for the Healthy Kids Collaborative, which is a part of UW Health and the Office of Population Health. We've partnered with the district on health and wellness initiatives for 10 years now since our inception. And I'm also a member of the District Wellness Advisory Council. And I just wanted to, first and foremost, just express my gratitude for all the teachers, the school nurses, all other school and district staff for all they're doing to support student learning and health during this challenging year. And that includes all of you on the board. So thank you so much. I wanted to speak tonight about a topic that I believe is going to be coming onto your agenda in several months or in early 2022. And it's a topic with which the board has been engaged in recent months, and that's wellness. The district wellness policy is up for renewal in 2022, and I'm here to ask the board to work with the legal department to push back the consideration and vote on the policy from when it is currently scheduled in January to June or later, in order to give district staff and senior leadership more time to coordinate and to allow more time for school community members to provide input on this very important issue and policy. As some of you may know, the wellness policy is actually a federal requirement. It must be reviewed and updated every 3 years, which means that most of you were not here on the board, at least, the last time that it was renewed. And so in my view, the policy represents an opportunity for this board and the MMSD school community at this critical time for school health to assess the district policy, the programs and practices that are currently in place to support the health and wellness of students, families, and staff, and to engage its school community members about what is going well and what could be improved, thinking about the needs and thinking about the opportunities. The work of updating the policy has started. I mentioned the District Wellness Advisory Council earlier. We had a kickoff meeting last month, and some feedback was generated by the council members at that time. And a feedback survey was recently shared through MMSD newsletters and communications to staff and students and parents as well. That is currently still open. But staff and partners that are helping facilitate the engagement processes that will inform the policy revision just need more time to facilitate listening sessions and focus groups with students, staff, and families, and to analyze the current policy and any proposed changes through the district's equity tool to be sure that the policy incorporates BIPOC voice and that is taking into account the experiences of underrepresented families and students. In sum, the current date of January to review and approve the policy is just not feasible. The wellness policy overlaps with so many departments and leaders' work, from social emotional learning to nutrition, building services, health services, physical education, etc. And there are many new people in these positions, and they need time. We need time to share and co-develop the policy with key staff so that they're bought in, they have a say in this, and that meaningful community informed, and that we create a meaningful and community informed policy, and we approve it, and that after that, when the real work starts, implementation, that we're set up for success for next school year and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes our public speakers for tonight. Ms. Muldrow.
Thank you, Barb. I move that we suspend the rules in order to take up item 9.1 out. Out of order, which is the motion to rename Memorial High School.
So moved.
I got a second from Nikki Vandermeulen. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Nikki, I'm going to ask you to take yourself off mute so that the people online can hear you.
Can I be heard by everyone now?
Yes, thank you.
Wanted to make sure before I started. I think our ad hoc has done a good job. I think our community has done a good job on Memorial. I agree that there are wrongs that historically need to be corrected, and I have no argument with that. I do request that we consider the top two names in our vote for Memorial High School, and I'd like to make an amendment that we consider the name Memorial High School as a name for Rule 9.1, item 9.1. I can't hear.
So I'll second your motion, Nikki.
Thank you. The reason is, if there was the reason I'm doing this is because I've heard of confusion on both sides, and I want our student voice to be heard as well as our other voice. And that's my opinion on the subject.
I'm sorry, tell me who seconded that. Thank you.
Ali Muldrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Board Member Vandermeulen. Board Member Carusi.
I just want to clarify, I think we have now two motions on the table. One is to move up the discussion of memorial renaming, and one is to amend, like put a second name on the table for consideration. And I'm wondering if we need to take care of the changing of the position in the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nama, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Hi.
And then Nikki, if you want to restate your amendment to that motion.
My amendment.
Wait,
would
I'm
be-
sorry. 1 second. Barb just chimed in. Barb,
Sorry, just put the motion on the table first and then Nikki can amend, okay? Thank you.
just a moment.
We don't know if you're talking, President Mojo, but we can't hear you yet.
You're muted.
I move that the Board of Education. I move that the Board of Education approve the recommendations of the Citizens Ad Hoc Committee relative to the renaming of James Madison Memorial High School and rename the school Val Phillips Memorial High School effective at the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year. Second, Chris Carusi.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Or Nikki, I'm gonna just
Yes.
take it back to you.
Yes, my motion is that I wish to amend Chairman Muldrow's motion to rename James Madison Memorial High School to consider the name Madison, or just consider the name Memorial High School without Madison, just Memorial High School.
I'll second your motion, Nikki. I'm gonna open for discussion. Board Member Carusi.
Thank you. So I'm still a little bit confused because I think the motion we eventually vote on needs to be a motion for one name for the high school. I don't think we're actually going to vote on a motion that would give the high school two names. So I'm wondering if, like, is this actually an amendment, or are we just putting a second name on the table to discuss, which could lead to an amendment to actually name the school Memorial and not Bell Phillips Memorial? It's, again, this is a procedural question. And Nikki, I don't want to, I think what you put on the table is legitimate. We need to talk about it. I'm just not sure if it's an amendment or just needs to be brought up and it could lead to an amendment.
So I think we're using the amendment right now to prompt the discussion of both names, which I'm comfortable with and will allow if other board members are comfortable with. So are folks comfortable having a discussion of both the names right now, or would we like to vote on an amendment to change the name without the discussion of both names on the table? I guess. I think that's what Nikki was trying to prompt, is the ability to talk about and discuss both names.
I absolutely am comfortable with that, but I wouldn't actually feel comfortable voting on an amendment that's to give the school to, like, I'd want the amendment eventually to just be one name. If that makes sense.
I agree.
Yeah.
Chris, I think that's a substitute motion that she's making. Well, you can put both on the table at once and discuss. I believe that is technically a substitute motion, not an amendment. You can't have two names for the one school. So you can continue your discussion though with both names on the table. But the last one is the one that you would be voting on first. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? I'm sorry, you see Ananda stand?
Yeah.
Ananda?
Yeah, I had my hand up and I appreciate Board Member Carusi clarify. I was a bit confused with the procedure too. So thank you everyone for that. I'm a bit confused and it might be because I'm a English as a second language. If we just call Memorial High School, what is being memorialized? And isn't that significant? I mean, my understanding, the reason that Maya put forward this recommendation to change the name is to intentionally remove a slave owner's name out of the high school where Black students attend. If we are just taking his name out and we're just keeping Memorial, I'm confused of what is our intention in keeping Memorial and what are we memorializing?
Board Member Vandermeulen?
Yes, I'd like, hold on, let me unmute. I'd like to memorialize I like the concept of East, West, La Follette Memorial. In fact, I do La Follette South, to be honest, because I like the cardinal directions. And Memorial, I think, recognizes and memorializes our student body as they are. That's the way I've always seen it. I see it as representing this part of the community. And I have no problem removing the James Madison. It's been a long time coming. That's not the part I object to. The part is that besides the branding, which has already been done on the name, I think that Memorial is what the school has been called for years. And I want to remove the slavery reference. That's why I removed the James Madison, while still memorializing our students and our pride in their education, which is the way I took it. But I can't guarantee how others do, so that's my view.
Thank you, Board Member Vandermeulen. Further discussion? Board Member Morelli?
Yeah, sorry, it was easier to raise my real hand than the virtual hand. Thank you so much, Board Member Vandermeulen, for that explanation. What I'm still a bit confused is that the same way that Memorial became Memorial because it was a shortened of a much longer name, why wouldn't Val Phillips Memorial just be Memorial?
Would you like me to respond, Chair, or someone else?
I guess I'll ask Board Member Morelli, who are you directing the question at?
I mean, I think this is part of the discussion conversation. What exactly, I'm confused with I appreciate the opportunity to bring back the discussion, but I'm not sure if I fully understand what's the issue with naming the full name of Val Phillips Memorial. We're not changing the memorial part of it. It's not just been called Val Phillips. It's still been called Val Phillips Memorial High School. So the memorial word, if it's if the word memorial is an important word, it's still in its name of the high school. I'm okay with moving President Muldrow. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, Board Member Gomez Schmidt.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that I think what I understand Nikki responding to is that there were a lot of people from the Memorial community who were reaching out and saying, yes, we agree, remove the name James Madison, but keep it Memorial instead of naming it after another person. And I think that was just a large sentiment that came from students, that came from alumni, that came from other people in the community. And I think that's just what Nikki was trying to express and share. And and another thing is that it was a very close vote in the ad hoc committee. I think it was a 5-6 vote about bringing the name Memorial forward to the board to consider.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, we are certainly considering this name Memorial. I guess to echo what Board Member Morelli mentioned, is it proper to memorialize the living, but also to underscore that the initial recommendation of Val Phillips Memorial High School came from a Memorial student, Maya Berry, that was advanced from the Memorial Black Student Union as well, and they are certainly members of our community, as long as I believe so. And so I do think that, this narrative that somehow Val Phillips Memorial also did not come from the Memorial High School community, I think is inaccurate. The Black Student Union here at Memorial High School advanced Val Phillips when Maya Berry first submitted this recommendation before us.
Thank you, Board Member Castro, Board Member Carusi, and then Board Member Vandermeulen.
Thank you, President Muldrow. So I want to thank all the members of the public who have sent written comments in, who have given us spoken comments, who otherwise contributed to the work of the renaming committee. So on one hand, I do think there is precedent for schools that are just called Memorial, Eau Claire Memorial being one example. I don't think there's a name before Memorial in that high school. So it wouldn't be unheard of to have a school just named Memorial. That said, I think the most important decision that the committee made was to keep the word memorial in the name of the school. Whatever name we put before memorial, this school will continue to be memorial. That's not going to change no matter who we decide to put forward as the person who we will honor with the name of our school. And in all my reading and understanding of Val Phillips, she's a phenomenal human being to honor through the naming of this school. She's an alumnus of the UW-Madison Law School. She's the first woman and person of color to serve as Secretary of State. She was the first Black person and woman to be assigned as a juror or as a justice in the state of Wisconsin. I think she was the first Black woman and maybe the first Black citizen to be on the Milwaukee Common Council. Even though she resided in Milwaukee, she has strong connections to Madison, and you can make the argument that Bob LaFollette was born in Primrose, Wisconsin. So, I think we have to be, open to using the name of our high schools to honor people who have truly made their imprint on our state. And Val Phillips, to me, is one of those people. When you get down to the finances and the uniforms and things like that, we're going to have to change the signage no matter what to take away the name James Madison. Any uniforms that have the name James Madison on them will need to change. Any uniforms that just have the word memorial may not have to change. So I really don't think there's an extra financial cost to Val Phillips. I think there are good arguments for just calling the school memorial, but it's also losing the opportunity to lift up a member of this state who I think can truly inspire students at Memorial to be amazing people and to see a future that Val Phillips carved for future students, particularly women of color and female students, to be able to do things that no one before them has done. And for that reason, I do think that Val Phillips is a good person to honor through the naming of this school, and to just call the school memorial is losing that chance. So.
Board Member Vandermeulen.
Yes, I learned about Val Phillips when I was in law school and her achievements in law, her achievements in history, her achievement, and I've met her a couple times before her death. I recognize and respect absolutely everything she has done for the law, everything she has done for our state. The reason I brought this up is because there was confusion and there were people who stated they felt that both names should be included. Therefore, I felt that both should be included, and if it's accepted, that's fine. If it's not accepted, that's also fine. It was not personal in any way whatsoever, other than to include what people said they were confused on the issue of transparency, which has always been my goal on this board.
Thanks. So I would just add as a something we should think about in the future, that as we move forward with renaming efforts, maybe we need to revisit our renaming policy. We did have some speakers say that they felt that the policy wasn't quite working right, and maybe before our next renaming exercise, we should revisit that policy and get community feedback to see if there's ways we can make it better.
Thank you so much for speaking to that, Board Member Carusi. Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Yes, I'd like to agree with Chris on that and recommend that we add the policy on renaming to our current list of policies that we need to review. And as we can't review and change policy in the middle of a renaming process, I suggest we do this before we take up more renaming proposals. I do believe that there's clarifications of the role of the committee versus the board that we could make in the policy that will bring more transparency and understanding of the process for the schools that are involved in the process, and also for the public. Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, in addition to, are we going to have more discussion on the different proposals in front of us, or should we just, I guess, one of the things that I would like to do, I just want to express my appreciation for the thoughtful deliberation of the board appointed citizen renaming committee and the leadership of Julian Walters. I thought they did a really good job of deliberating and debating and taking a lot of things into consideration. The one thing I do want to speak to, since we are sitting in Memorial High School right now, is one proposal that was made that did not get forwarded to us, and that was Bruce Dahman. Make good decisions was the motto that was instilled in Memorial High School by Bruce Dahman, who served the school community as a teacher, coach, and leader for over 40 years. And Bruce strived to create a place where students belonged and found opportunities to learn and grow on their way to adulthood, even if they didn't always make good decisions. And I just wanted to share that despite Bruce Dahman not being recommended as the new name for Memorial High School, he will always be part of the Memorial School community. I walked through the Bruce Dahman Welcome Center this afternoon. There's a scholarship in Bruce's name that will continue to support generations of Memorial students after high school. And most importantly, there are teachers and leaders in our school who are better at their jobs because of Bruce. And in this age of political and social divisiveness, the one thing I would guess Bruce would be doing right now is bringing people together to collaboratively find solutions that would benefit students. His focus was on students and what they needed to succeed. So I just wanted to mention that, given the space that we're in tonight. And second, a lot of people have weighed in on removing the name James Madison and simply calling the school Memorial High School. And I do understand the appeal of this option. The school is known as Memorial. One staff member who submitted a written comment explained that there's a lot of pride in our name, and we often say welcome to the Memorial family and use the phrase the Memorial way. I do want to highlight what several other board members have said, is that the committee voted early on in this process to retain the name Memorial. If another name was selected, no matter what that name would be in front of it. And I felt that this was a practical solution that shows we recognize and value the Memorial High School community that spans decades of alumni to our current students. This will still be Memorial High School. And third, I'd just like to say that what I've focused on since the recommendation of the committee is what we would be gaining. And as many others have said, Val Phillips was a trailblazer in the state, accomplishing a lot of firsts when it was not easy for a Black woman to do so. And if we approve this name change, we'll be honoring the legacy of an individual who led throughout her life as a lawyer, as a judge, as Secretary of State, and as an advocate for civil rights. I guess one thing I do want to point out is that simply changing the name won't teach students about who Val Phillips was and her role in state government. And so this change also provides us with an opportunity as a district, I think, to redefine how we teach our high school students about civics, about how local, state, and government works, and why active participation as a citizen is important.
Thank you so much, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt. Board Member Pearson, and then Board Member Vandermeulen, are you trying to have your hand up for the queue? Okay.
Okay, I just want to just state a point of order. Right now, the motion is about renaming the school to Val Phillips with the addition of consideration of it just being named Memorial. So like I understand Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, your statement about Bruce Dahman. However, that is not a discussion that we are to have of other names. So I just wanted just to mention that as a point of order, just because right now the current motion is the two names, and that is the discussion of those two names. I don't know, I think there is an opportunity if you wanted to suggest or ask for like a friendly amendment of that motion to add a discussion about that piece, then I think we can actually have that as on the table to actually discuss it. But I think, Barb, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just point of order of what our motion is and the discussion centering around that, as well as, I don't think we can talk about creation or the change of a policy, because that's not the discussion that we're supposedly having right now. So those are just 2 points of order that I just wanted just to kind of call out. So.
Thank you, Board Member Pearson. Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I guess I would just say that it's all pretty relevant to us taking the big step and monumental step of renaming a high school. And so my comments were just more to share with the community as part of this Madison Memorial community, just about someone who is really important and was also considered in this naming process, but wasn't brought forward from the committee. And this is sort of the one opportunity that board members have to do that. And so I felt that that was important for the Memorial community to hear.
Thank you, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt. Nama, I'm gonna ask you to chime in before we kind of move on with the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear from one of you and about, your discussion that you've been having. We actually had as robust as I wanted it to be, it wasn't, but we did have a conversation in Student Senate about the renaming of Memorial High School. And we had a lot of, I guess, not confusion, but just the differentiation between Val Phillips and Madison Memorial. While we think Madison Memorial would be a phrase or just something that wouldn't be able to offer that much change, Val Phillips offers more conversation in our community to offer more insight and kind of elaboration about who we are as a community. And as Board Member Castro was saying, that the Black Student Union and from Madison Memorial was a student who offered this name. So kind of honoring, kind of respecting their choice as a student at the school. We took that into consideration as we kind of discussed those two names on the table. And I guess just to elaborate, since a lot of the other board members also discussed about, the importance of Val Phillips, I think this is just a great opportunity for students to know more about more Black leaders that are in our community. And this would just provide more of not a ladder, but just kind of a bridge for more opportunities for our curriculum and our school to elaborate more on how we can offer more kind of like civics, but also platforms where students can raise their voice and kind of learn more about these leaders. So that's what kind of the input I was getting from more students who are in Student Senate, not necessarily go to Madison Memorial, but different schools that just had a perspective that they wanted to share. So I just wanted to include that. But I also, it's been very nice to hear from one of y'all and kind of listening to see how you guys are taking this step, because I know students and kind of older people have like this sense of, changing something is like it's kind of a big step, and especially a school name. So kind of learning how you guys are taking this and students was an interesting perspective to be a part of. And so I just wanted to bring that perspective to the table from the students. So thank you.
Nama, thank you so much for offering that. And I just want to chime in before the discussion continues and say that I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that there's a lot of potential in Val Phillips' name. And I also think there are so many roles that folks of color and women, and particularly folks who sit at the intersection of race and gender and a variety of other areas, haven't had the opportunity to participate in yet. And I do think that when we acknowledge the history that Val Phillips carved for our state in terms of, allowing women of color to see themselves in positions of leadership that they had never been in before, I hope that the students of Memorial who maybe look at the roles that have not been available to someone like them in the past and continue not to be available to someone like them are inspired to change that and see the name of their school of evidence that, it only takes one person to shift the way we as a society work and who gets to be at the table. And so I think I'm tremendously grateful for the work of the ad hoc committee, and I'm tremendously grateful for Maya Berry, the student who brought this forward years ago. I think that there's a real significant opportunity, and I think that it is hard to change. I think we do have some hesitancy or some fear around change. But it's really reassuring to see that there aren't a bunch of comments today clinging to the name James Madison Memorial. If there's anything that's incredibly obvious and coming through within the materials we've been provided with, it's that folks are ready to change. And to what extent is really what we're talking about tonight. And I think that the support for the name Val Phillips is something that I've heard from a lot of community members. I've heard from a lot of young people. And I am excited by the potential to engage in a conversation with our community and our students about who Val Phillips was long-term. And so I think that's a tremendous opportunity, and I am prepared to vote in support of the name change to Val Phillips Memorial High School. With that being said, I would like to ask my fellow board members if there is any further discussion. Board Member Pearson? A roll call vote? Absolutely. Board Member Vandermeulen, I am going to read the original motion. If you want to amend or create a substitute motion, I'm going to ask that you read it after I read that motion. Otherwise,
I am dropping it.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted the discussion.
I appreciate it. Board Member Vandermeulen. I move that the Board of Education approve the recommendation of the Citizens Ad Hoc Committee relative to the renaming of James Madison Memorial High School and rename the school Val Phillips Memorial High School effective at the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year. Nama, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Board Member Carusi?
Aye.
Board Member Gomez-Schmidt?
Aye.
Board Member Morelli?
Aye.
Board Member Castro?
Aye.
Board Member Muldrow? Aye. Board Member Vandermeulen?
Aye.
Board Member Pearson?
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. I think we can return back to item 4.1. Thank you.
Thank you. We are moving on to the board president's announcements. Dr. Jenkins?
I could wait under the superintendent's comments. It was about this particular issue. I was just going to make my comments. I could do it there. That'd be fine.
Oh, my apologies, Dr. Jenkins. I did not see you. I'm going back and forth between screens tonight. So thank you for working with me. Board president's announcements. Today, we did our best to go about our daily routines. However, we did so in collective heartbreak as we continued to process the tragedy that unfolded in Waukesha roughly 24 hours ago. Yesterday, only an hour east of here, families gathered along a parade route on Main Street in Waukesha to celebrate community and friendship while embracing the tradition of the holiday season. Today, we struggle to find words to explain why an event of such intended warmth could end so violently and cold. In our thoughts, we have all put ourselves on Main Street that day as a parent, sibling, son, daughter, grandparent, grandchild, family member, neighbor, or friend. Although we may never find an explanation, we must continue to center ourselves in humanity. For the victims who lost their lives or were injured, you are in our thoughts. For the families impacted, we share in your pain. For our neighbors in the Waukesha community, the Madison Metropolitan School District and the City of Madison grieve along with you. Memorial High School students collaborate on weekly Spartan news videos. A group of student members of Madison Memorial Spartan News helped to write, shoot, edit their school's weekly video news series. These students have created nearly 260 episodes of Spartan News since it began in 2012, led by Memorial's Art Department Chair, Joe Frontier. With this mission of informing, entertaining, and making the Memorial community feel more cohesive, these students help continue this ongoing work to highlight the best parts of school. The board recognizes the student members and Art Department Chair Joe Frontier for their ongoing work of keeping students and staff informed, engaged, and eager to uplift their school and community and school spirit. Madison East student-led Food Equity Club organized food pantries help with food insecurity. Since its creation in 2015-2016 school years, members of the Food Equity Club at Madison East High School have created innovative ways to improve and increase food accessibility for their fellow students, formerly known as the Food for Thought Club. The club serves students through 3 main outlets: an open food pantry, a secured storage food pantry, and a snack program. The Food Equity Club also collaborates with students in special education to organize the snack program, which supplies students who are food insecure with ready-to-eat food. Special education teachers and their students visit grocery stores to purchase the snack items, then sort and deliver the goods to teachers. The board recognizes and appreciates all the students and staff involved in improving food accessibility and equitability distributing practices at East High School. And with that, we move on to the superintendent's announcements. Dr. Jenkins.
Let me just first of all echo the comments made by board chair and just saying that we are here with you across the country, not only just here in Wisconsin. We're seeing a continuous acts that are occurring that's causing real harm in our communities. And we stand with not only our local community across the state, but around the country. And I do say during these particular times, we're also seeing a lot of goodness taking place. And recently, even in our own district, when we had some degrees of disturbance at East High School, it was beautiful to see a teacher come forth with her teachers and have a gumbo and conversation based off Chef Chase from New Orleans, who during the civil rights time would bring together communities who are having disagreements about what was going on, just to have a cup of gumbo and conversation. During that cup of gumbo and conversations, we were joined not only by students, but some staff, board members, and other community members. And I just want to say hats off to East High School for stepping forward and trying to be a leader in the midst of us in the middle of these dual pandemics. Also hats off to the moms of East High School, as you currently have moms on a mission, stepping up and really trying to make a difference in their school environment. And also thank you to the parents who have reached out with concern. Hey, we all have concerns over when our children are going to schools in our community or in our schools. And I want to thank everyone who spoke up in different ways. And there are a number of people who offered their support. There were some who were concerned, and we're going to continue to be in this as an entire district and as an entire community. And I just want to say thank you to all those individuals. Tonight, my heart, though, have been heavy about a number of things going on. Tonight, I am actually inspired by this discussion that just took place about 2 of the most beautiful people that it could have been about, right? Bruce Diamond, 28 years ago, I started my community there with him. And I have to say with Bruce and Peggy, because they were never separated, right? If you saw Bruce, you saw Peggy. And what they did at the school, I can understand some of the students and some of the people of the community. I really can. Just a beautiful individual. And the fact that we had this level of conversation tonight, the conversation that's been in the committee, I get that. But I think we were near unanimous on the fact that James' name had to go. I think everybody, hey, we cannot be James Madison. during these particular times. So nevertheless, I appreciate the committee. I appreciate the community feedback and all of that. And that's so warming for myself as superintendent to know I definitely made the right choice coming back to Madison, because this is what Madison is about. We have tough conversations, but we move forward. And then to say, we're going to name the school after Val Phillips, 1958, you're talking about a graduate of UW-Madison. You're talking about civil rights leader. Val Phillips would have been here tonight on one side and Bruce Darman on the other side. And they both would have probably been saying, don't name it after me, name it after somebody else. You know, but I don't say Val Phillips as a Black woman. Val Phillips is much bigger than just an individual identified for whatever characteristics we give. She happens to be a Black woman, but she's a role model for all of us. And let's not let that go short. I think the debate tonight, I could just say to the board members, I could say to the committee and to our community, job well done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins. We will move forward with the report on items that proceeded through the instruction work group held on November 1st, 2021. Board Member Pearson.
Sorry, I was just getting to my screen to unmute myself. Okay, thank you, Board Chair Mildred. As always, we have our wellness checks that we have every meeting beforehand, just to check in on just COVID across our district, as well as we have been working on the art of teaching and learning. And we had a presentation, and it was a beautiful presentation. We did have, again, some difficulties with tech, so, but it was a nice presentation. We also discussed our equity audit and as well as the policies on field trips. Yeah. And so our next meeting, we will be discussing the joint itinerary task force recommendations and a wellness check, and as always, and then also discussing advanced learning and honors policy review and restorative justice practices, an update on the social emotional learning. So we do have some space to add other items, but these are the items that we are proposing for our next meeting on December 6th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Pearson. Reports on the items that proceeded through the operations work group held on November 8th, 2021. Board Member Carusi.
Thank you, President Mildred. So we had three items of discussion at the November 8th operations work group meeting. We talked about the recommendations from the Citizens Ad Hoc Committee for renaming James Madison Memorial High School, which has now been renamed to Val Phillips Memorial High School. We got an update on the direction and vision for MMSD food service. And we got a presentation of data relative to enrollment and class size in the district, which will inform our upcoming budget discussions. We are not meeting in December because December is a short month with winter break and there's just time for one work group meeting. So we're having an instruction work group meeting. In January, we will begin our budget development process. Our January conversation will focus on the development of maintenance of equity and an equity-based budget. We will also talk about the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER funding, that is coming to the district through ESSER 3. And we will talk about our transportation policy, specifically around middle school start times. That's my report. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Board Member Carusi. Action items that proceeded through the instruction work group held on November 1st, 2021, field trip policy number 3350. I move that the Board of Education approve the revisions to board policy 3350 field trips as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular board meeting dated November 26, 2021.
Second, Nikki Vandermeer.
Thank you, Board Member Vandermeulen. Any discussion? Nama, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7. I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all motions set forth in Section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the November 22nd, 2021 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written, by voting affirmatively on this motion. A board member expresses his, hers, or their affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separations that have been made by any members of the school board. Board Member Vandermeulen, are you seconding?
I am seconding and also suggesting that 10.6, the referendum building construction, I think it's 10.6 be removed. Separate.
Okay, thank you. Any other separations? Board Member Carusi?
Yes, 10.7, 10.11, and 10.14.
So we've got 10.6, 10.7, 10.11, and 10.14 so far.
That's what I have.
Thank you. Board Member Gomez-Schmidt?
And 10.13.
I believe I'm right on the number on the construction bill, but I'm not positive because I don't have my agenda in front of me.
Yes, yes. All right. All those in favor of the ones that have not been separated, Nama, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Any abstentions? Any objections? Motion carries 7. All right. The first one we're gonna pull out is 10.6, I believe. I move that the Board of Education authorize payment of the referendum invoices covering the period of October 12th, 2021 through November 9th, 2021 in the total amount of 100,000, I'm sorry. Yeah, 111,536 and 65 cents. Second, Board Member Pearson. Any discussion? Board Member Vandermeulen?
Reason I pulled, this is the construction one, 10.6, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The reason I pulled this was just to state that we need to also look at the policy and include design assist in the policy in the future, because right now our policy doesn't do that. That's the only thing I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for bringing our attention to that, Board Member Vandermeulen. Any further discussion? Nama, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 7. So from there, we're at 10.7.
Correct.
Thank you, Barb. I move that the Board of Education enter into a contract for mental health navigation services with Care Solace in the amount of $150,504 from the student and staff support budget as paid from the Dane County DHS K-12 mental health grant. I'm going to wait for a second on this motion. Second.
Chris Gomez-Schmidt.
Thank you, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt. And then Board Member Morelli.
I was not the one separating this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Board Member Vandermeulen thought you were trying to speak.
No, not at this point.
Okay. My apologies, Board Member Morelli. Board Member Carisi.
Thank you. So I did separate this one just because I have a couple questions before we vote on it. So Care Solace, my understanding is it's a national organization that helps school districts navigate mental health options for students and families, and substance abuse options as well. What I would like to know is, getting access to mental health care right now in our community is challenging. There's people with intense needs and not enough services. So I'm just curious if CareBridge is actually going to be able to help families access services better. Like, are they just going to point them towards services where there's a waiting list? Like, I'm actually wondering if it's going to actually help people get the service they need, or if it's just going to help them navigate a maze that will eventually lead to a waiting list. So that's my question. Like, will this service actually get people to the care they need?
I think that's a very relevant question. I'm curious, Board Member Carusi, who are you directing your question at?
I believe it would be Leah Esser.
Hello, I am actually here with Kristen Getchow, who is our mental health coordinator, and I am going to let her take this because she can speak pretty concretely to that question.
Yeah, it's a great question. We are really seeing this as a pilot. We have this opportunity with this grant to really see how they enter into our community. And nationally, their statistics are that they reduce the waiting list by a significant amount of time. They cite 2 weeks in general that they're able to connect families to services. It's untried in this community. And so I think it's a great question. And nationally, we're not unique in the same struggles. So what I really like about this is that there's it's not just sort of a robot that's doing this service. It's a person nationally that is connecting families and staying with them all the way through the point of service and beyond. So after a family has made a connection with their student, they'll check in to see, was it the right person? Was it the right connection? And so they have a lot of statistics that seemed really, and a lot of school districts who've really relied on this as part of their mental health plan in bridging between school and community.
Further discussion? Board Member Pearson.
Thank you. Yeah. So is their network all do they go from their own pool, or is it basically anyone with those titles?
They really come into a community and create a list of all of the services that are available within the community. So it's not just their network. I mean, they create a network on their computer system, but they do come into the community and look at and build a whole series of folks, not just sort of related to one insurance system or things like that. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, it does. I asked that question because not only is it difficult to get therapists and mental health services, just in general, but it's even more difficult for Black and Brown folks to actually have access to that. And it's even more difficult to find Black and Brown folks who are actually therapists or licensed to give mental health resources. And so for me, it's very imperative, if this is an option that we are going to utilize, that they understand that that is the reality in our community, but then they're also sensitive to that and how they're going to be working with Black and Brown families. Just from experience, I get that it's extremely hard, and we have been placed on waiting lists just personally in my family. So until we were actually able to get someone of color, and it took years to do that. So that is the reason why I asked that question. Thank you.
There are opportunities for families to give preferences, including things like that they would like to be matched with, say, a Black or Brown therapist, or for a language. And we get a lot of data on the backside too, to say where our biggest matches were and how long they were. So we're hoping that this will offer some data as well back to us about where we're finding some success in the community and where we're not. And we can continue to feed that back The other folks that are really doing collecting some of that data is the Behavioral Health Resource Center for the county. So we really see this as working hand in hand with some of that initiative that's happening as well.
Thank you. Further discussion? Board Member Vandermeulen?
Yes, also, I have the same concern Baya does, along with the disabled, it's took me a year and a half to be able to convince both doctors and mental health professionals that cerebral palsy is a permanent condition. It doesn't go away. It took a year and a half to find a neurologist and that said that I exist as a person. So having done that, I can definitely relate. The second issue and what I have I'm echoing. The second reason that I have a problem with is we're creating data points for the behavioral health system in the county. And how do we know what this data is being used for? Who is it going to? How are we measuring the behavior? Is it going to be fed to the police? Is it going to be fed to those agencies who determine and end up discriminating against minority groups based on this so-called behavior in a crisis? Are people actually going to be able to feel free to speak? I'm not sure that this is the kind of data we're looking for. I think this could actually cause more harm than good.
Oh, I'm sorry if I misspoke or it wasn't clear. The data that we'll get are like which agencies get the most of our referrals and how fast it is that we're able to get into those agencies. There's nothing more identifying about that or types of behavior, things like that.
That's helpful. Thank you.
We can't hear if people are talking.
Ollie, I'm sorry, I had to mute you while Nikki was speaking. It was echoing. Thank you. So,
My apologies. Board Member Morelli?
Yeah, thank you so much, President Modrow, and thank you, Board Member Pearson. Part of my question was what you mentioned regarding accessibility to brown, Black therapists and to the language access to, which is has been a challenge. I just wanted to clarify: is this service open to all our MMSD students and their families? And what is comprised what are we defining as family? I guess that's my question.
My understanding, and we'll get more information as we move forward, is that we will have for rollout is that we will have an access number for our MMSD community. And when we are rolling that out to families, that they'll be able to use it for themselves in the way that they see fit. So the examples were given that, if you have the access code, you can use it for yourself as a parent, you can use it for your child, our staff members can use it for themselves. So again, I consider this a pilot, and so we have a lot to learn, but it was presented as if it was a very wide definition and that we're not the ones policing that. We're offering the access code.
That's excellent. And then staff members can also access for their children and their spouses as well, or their partners?
Again, my understanding is that once people have the access code, they can use it in a way that we're not monitoring for the who or the how. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you. We're excited to see how it rolls out. We really are really seeing this as a pilot and interested to learn more with answering all the questions that you all have.
Yeah, I want to thank my fellow board members for their comments. I think, making sure folks can expedite the process in terms of interacting with a healthcare professional who can provide the support folks need. And I want to thank Board Member Vandermeulen for her comments specifically, because I think in you speaking about your own personal experience, which I know can be incredibly challenging to do publicly, you're really acknowledging what can happen when you're not paired with the right professional, and when your healthcare is not taken seriously. And so I think that this is a pretty great opportunity to see if we can provide greater support in helping folks be paired with the provider that they need. And it is because of that that I am going to vote in support of this motion. Board Member Carusi.
Quick follow-up comment on monitoring and evaluating the success of this. Will we be collecting our own data on the success of this program, or is all of it going to be coming from the provider? I'm a little concerned about our entire evaluation being based on feedback from the provider who's like financially benefiting from the service. So I just would like to get a little sense of like what data will we be collecting independently and doing our own independent review of how successful or not this program is.
Chris, thank you for that point. I'm honestly gonna have to think on that a little bit because I don't know how many times they've accessed the code without asking, or the code's been used, and what successful connections there are without data coming from them. I don't know how to independently look at that, but maybe there's some reviews we can send out to schools and get some user feedback in some other ways.
Thank you so much for that question, Board Member Carusi. Any further questions or discussion? Nama, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Item 11.11, 10.11, thank you.
I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of classroom furniture items from Demico in the amount of $857,498.80, and Vicro in the amount of $169,748.90, for a total of the amount of $1,027,247.70, funded by the ESSER 2 federal grant. Nikki, are you seconding?
Yes, I am.
Second from Nikki Vandermeulen. Any discussion? Board Member Carusi.
Thank you. So I pulled this just because, again, I have some clarification questions before we move forward with this decision to finance this purchase. My first question is about process. The memo that went with this consent agenda item talked about how this is the first phase of purchasing furniture for our schools. And I'm curious both how we're phasing in schools, how many schools will be phased in? Is this going to affect all of our schools? And also how decisions are being made about what resources go to each school, just looking at the very different amount of money going to each school, which sometimes looks like it's associated with school size, but I'm not seeing too many parallels with poverty, like poverty schools getting more resources. So I'm wondering if it's about, which schools have more recently gotten furniture and therefore have fewer needs for new furniture. I'd just like to know more about both the phase process and the process of deciding how we're allocating resources to individual schools. Secondly, my second question is about COVID. I know that we're using COVID relief money to fund this furniture purchase, but are we taking the long view that we're trying to purchase furniture for a time when we may not have to keep students 3 to 6 feet apart? Will the furniture continue to work in all kinds of learning environments? And finally, my third question is, when we're looking at purchasing or outfitting classrooms, are we also considering outdoor classrooms in these decisions? So 3 questions, one about process, one about thinking beyond COVID, and one about outdoor classrooms. And I think I'm directing this to Mr. Hodo or somebody on his team.
not sure that Cedric is here, but Chris, I can attempt to answer some of your questions real quick, and I'll try and go in reverse order. Globally, though, the money we're discussing tonight is related to our Reimagining Classrooms funding on ESSER 2. The schedule allocation for this from our budget book indicates that we're holding $4 million of funding on ESSER 2 for Reimagining Classrooms. This is being called the phase 1 order because we've been engaging in a protracted process with our buildings to identify classroom furniture and spaces that can be modular and used in multiple settings. So I said reverse order, and I guess I'm going in order, so forget that. But we had a list of furniture that we previewed to all of our principals. They were allowed to select which classroom spaces they could order from. That included some standard furniture items, but it also included other items, including outdoor spaces and some potential for gazebos and outdoor classroom awnings and shelters. Those you're not seeing tonight because those require a bit more planning and consideration from the building services team to get on the schedule to get these items installed. Now that the ground is set to freeze, we're probably not going to be moving on that immediately, but we will be bringing more of that back for later this winter and into the spring. Other than that, let's see here. I believe I addressed all three quickly there, but is there a clarification you want any of those, Chris?
Ross, I can also jump in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer some of your questions as well, Chris, and only because I help work with DEMCO to put together the renderings for the classrooms for elementary as well as secondary. The furniture that will be used, it is all flexible furniture that will allow for teachers to be able to use during or even when we're out of COVID. Most of the classroom that we put together for students and for schools to be able to pick from, all of this family was high flexible seating. So all the tables, they fold, they nest. They're able for teachers to be able to do quickly grouping. The tables are on casters, so they're able to move throughout the space. So all of the furniture will work during the time of when we need to keep the distance, but even when we out. So we did kind of think about what that long view looked like. You can also think about some of the furniture that they're looking for through DEMCO. It is, for example, they can grow indoor things for them, the students to be able to eat from. So like having that, I can't think of the name of it right now, sorry, but it was where they can plant lettuce and different things on the inside in the classroom for them to be able to do those things now through DEMCO. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I was the one who kind of worked with DEMCO to look at the flexible spaces in the classrooms.
So thank you so much for those responses. That answers most of my questions. I think the one question that I still am unsure about is how are we deciding what resources go to which school, given how different the allocations are?
Thank you. So the amounts sorry, TJ.
Real quick. Go ahead, Ross.
The allocations aren't reflected in the ordering here. This is just based on the initial responses we got from buildings. The allocations themselves were not just done based on population. We did take our low-income status into consideration when determining thresholds to use. That being said, the Reimagined Classrooms team is reviewing and evaluating all of the orders such that if a building is above or below the threshold we set based on that budget guidance, we will make a determination if we need to adjust those limits. So if there's a building that has a more severe need beyond what the allocation provided for, we may take consideration in when the ordering comes through. TJ, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I was just gonna add, sorry, my camera's moving, so there you go. I think that what you're just seeing is just the first round. I think all of the schools had access to the funds and they decided how they want to spend the funds. So some of the schools are using the funds for that flexible spacing. As Ross said earlier, and I think Chris, you asked the question about outdoor. Some of the schools are deciding to use those funds just for outdoor furniture, while these are just the ones who might be using for the indoor. So I think when you're looking at the phase approach, this might be the group who's all just with these particular vendors. So these are the first order that you're seeing, but you might see more as we're beginning to process these funds through the Reimagining the Classroom space.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Aye.
Ali, I'm sorry, you're muted, so we didn't hear the motion there. Okay, sorry.
All-
one more time.
I'm sorry, Namahir advisory vote.
Good. Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Item 10.13.
I move that the Board of Education accept a grant from the Department of Public Instruction in the amount of $64,000 to support planning and implementation of the talented development services for MMSD advanced learners with funding from the 2021-2022 Advanced Learning Operating Budget. Second, Nikki Vandermeulen. Any discussion? Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Yeah, I pulled this one from the consent just so to sort of celebrate this addition of additional funding, and I can see Sharon clapping here to support the advanced learning department, and just really curious what the planning has been around this because I know we've been talking about talent development for a really long time and how we're going to do this to benefit more students. So I guess I just pulled to sort of celebrate and then get a few more details on what the actual programming and services are going to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just wanted to let the board know we originally were approved for $30,000 when we first received notification from DPI, and they asked us to do an addendum to increase that to $64,000. Super excited for the opportunities this provides for our programming and for all of our students. We are going to be providing some graphing calculators, which was a request from our high schools as we think about equity and many of our students moving into those very difficult and challenging statistics and AP courses. They are seeing a need for this, and our graphing calculators are quite expensive. So we did receive some funding to ensure that we have that for our high schools. We are also looking at the 5 domains of gifted instruction, and I think we do a pretty decent job, or beginning to do a great job at the areas of our general intelligence and our basically the specific academic areas, but we really have not focused in our other domains of creativity, leadership, and the visual and performing arts. So we originally placed the request in to really look at maybe our individual staff members can't provide those services, but we can work them with the many partnerships that we have in Madison. Started working with our gifted coordinator. So we're looking at some theater arts programming and some drama and music opportunities for most of our students. Are really trying to, collaborate with people and utilize those dollars for that purpose. We are looking at also trying to provide some opportunities at some of our demonstration sites where we think STEAM, which is of course science and technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics are going to be a focus for those schools. And then align with the work that we're doing in letters, we're looking at an audiobook program to support some families in oral literacy. So the ideas that we're looking at are very specific to students who are currently in the program, but also extending so that we can really say talent is about finding that potential and giving those opportunities to more students.
Thanks for that clarification. And again, just like you said, to have the funding double is a great thing for MMSD, and to have the funding double at the state. The state funding was at $200,000 for competitive grants for the longest time across the whole state. To have it doubled up to $400,000 is amazing, but I would still advocate for further funding at the state level, given that the states around us invest millions at the state level in this area to make sure that we are finding more students and supporting their academic needs and their creativity leadership. So thank you.
Board Member Carusi and then Board Member Pearson.
Thank you, President Muldrow. So I actually have a procedural clarification. The memo that accompanies this consent item asks for the board to approve a DPI grant, but the motion asks for the money to come out of the advanced learning operating budget. I'm confused. Should the motion actually be to accept the grant or to move this out of the operating budget? I'd like to get that clarified.
I'm not sure if that's a Ross question, but when I originally submitted the information, we were letting them know that we had received this for our AL department to use. So I'm not sure exactly how that gets budgeted or placed, but we will be working with Marcy. And Marcy indicated, again, you will get board approval. Once you get the board approval, then we'll work with DPI to ensure those dollars are then placed and allocated for our students.
Chris, you're correct. I think there's a wording change that needs needed there. We're voting simply to accept the grant at this point.
In that case, should I amend this? Would that be the best process?
Yeah, I was actually
Okay.
just going to ask Chris if you have the language to amend.
I think I can come up with it quick. I'll just I'll read the recommendation off the consent memo and then we can decide if that will work. It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the grant from the Department of Public Instruction in the amount of $64,000 to support planning and implementation of the talent development services for MMSD advanced learners. So that's what's in the consent memo. Does that capture adequately what was in?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's my amendment.
I'll second your amendment. Board Member Pearson.
I just wanted to state how grateful I am, Sharon, that your department is looking for our community partners to assist in the work. As a parent of a daughter who was identified in advanced learning for leadership, we always struggled of like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And so I'm always a big supporter of finding community members to help us in the education of our children. And so I'm so glad that you mentioned that. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I'm excited to see what comes about from it.
I do have to thank our board members that are part of ALAC and also Dr. Donna Ford. She again said, you don't have a huge team. Your team is split between several schools, so you need to work outside. You cannot do it all. Please work with your partners. And at this point in time, we are taking that to heart.
Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alexander. And I'm just looking forward to a continued conversation in how this fits into the larger work of the Advanced Learning Department. And just thank you for continuing the work of the advisory committee and just some more clarity around how it fits eventually so that we have a better vision of how this department is operating within curriculum and instruction and how it spans across all schools to meet learning needs. So again, thank you for pursuing the grant and for doing this work. Really appreciated.
Dr. Alexander, I just want to chime in and say thank you so much for the work that you're doing to expand opportunities for our students in all 5 areas or domains of advanced learning. It is really tremendously exciting to hear that our young people are going to have a greater depth of opportunity and that being recognized as an advanced learner is going to have greater meaning in terms of the supports and rigor that our students will be able to access at school. So I greatly appreciate your work. And I also want to thank the work of your team and the community partners that you are collaborating with. I think it's incredibly important. Also, shout out to DPI. Thank you for recognizing the high quality work that is happening at MMSD and funding it, increasing funding. So thank you for all the initiative you're taking to get this work done. And thank you to Dr. Pryor and Kaylee Jackson as well for the support that they're giving you in order to create these opportunities for our young people, particularly in the area of performing arts, where I think we've really struggled to enhance the opportunities our students have available to them. So thank you very much. I'm excited to vote in support of our acceptance of the grant. With that being said, is there any further discussion? Nama, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Any abstentions? Any recusals?
I'm abstaining due to my conflict with my employer.
Thank you, Board Member Morelli. Motion carries 6-1. All right, and we are moving on to
10.14 is the last one.
all right. Donation of, I'm sorry. I move that the Board of Education accept a donation of the amount of $108,000 from the AmFam Foundation to support MMSD's early literacy initiatives. I'd like to start this conversation once we have a second. Second, Board Member Pearson. I will start by saying thank you so much to the AmFam Foundation for your support. And I will open us up for further discussion. Board Member Carusi.
I need to recuse from this vote due to a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Board Member Carusi. Any other discussion? Nama, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
No candy.
In any abstentions? Chris, are you abstaining? Oh, any recusals? Motion carries 6. All right, and that gets us through the consent agenda. All right, City of Madison Education Committee. Board Member Morelli.
Thank you so much, President Muldrow. The committee did not meet at the last month or this month due to a conflict meeting with one of our special meetings, but we are excited to resume our work. The next meeting on December 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Morelli. Student Senate, Nama.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, so we met last week, I believe, and that was our meeting before break. And that was our first meeting where we had official leadership roles, which was really exciting as we got to see the new leadership team up close and got to talk to them and see what their plans are for this year. We are hearing from a diverse set of voices, a lot of different age categories from middle school to freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and also from a variety of different schools, which is very exciting as Student Senate has always been facilitated on specific high schools. So we're excited to see where that's going to go with projects and proposals that Student Senate will make. And yeah, I guess the leadership roles was our big goal and big accomplishment from our last meeting that I wanted to share. I'm so excited to see, the new things that we can accomplish in our different committees. We have really great anti-racist committee, civic committee, and communication committee, where we're going to hopefully accomplish a lot this year and take it up close and personal with a lot of different schools.
Thank you so much, Nama. Madison School and Community Recreation Advisory Committee, Board Member Vandermeulen.
Yes, we did not meet. Our next meeting is December 14th, where we will discuss the new members who have joined, our recruitment efforts, and also discuss how that the increase for seasonal employees, their pay increase that recently went through, and how that will affect our ability to hire staff in the summer. And that is all from that committee.
Thank you, Board Member Vandermeulen. I move that the Board of Education accept a project proposal from Madison Metropolitan School District MMSD Athletics to 1, accept the plan to upgrade the playing field turf at East La Follette Memorial and West High School above and beyond the investment and commitments approved through the 2020 facilities referendum proposal. And 2, accept through pre-approval an amount of up to $120,000 in donations through the high school affiliated booster club for East La Follette Memorial and West High Schools, no later than March 21st, 2022. This action is taken based on the understanding that MMSD athletics fundraising must meet the fundraising deadline with cash in hand in order for the project to continue by the deadline noted in the attached presentation materials for the regular board meeting dated November 22nd, 2021. Second, Board Member Vandermeulen. Any discussion? Nama, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion carries 7. We will now receive our audit. So receipt of the 2020-2021 financial statement audit.
Good evening. Real quickly, I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that we provided the additional materials for our financial audit for the 2021 school year. I also want to take a minute to introduce some members who joined us tonight. First is Natalie Rue, our Comptroller. I wanted to acknowledge her hard work in this process. The audit is a massive undertaking for the district, and she's a very competent leader in this area and has seen us through a number of audits in this school district now, and I'm happy to have her on our team. I also want to introduce Brian Anderson and Rob Ganchow with Whipfly, our current audit firm, and I believe they have a brief presentation just to show the overview of their findings this evening. So Barb, I don't know if you want to give Brian or Rob sharing rights to the presentation they have for this evening, or if you'd like to put it up now.
I'll put it up. Thank you.
You bet. Brian and Rob, when you're ready to advance the slides, please just let Barb know.
Thank you very much, Ross. As Ross indicated, we recently wrapped up the audit of the district's financial statements for the year ended 6/30/21. We certainly appreciate the assistance provided to us during the course of that audit. We understand that we are an intrusion into the day-to-day activities of the district's staff. So we certainly appreciate all of the assistance that they provided us in making sure that our questions and our informational requests were responded to as soon as possible. If you can flip it to the next slide for me. We issue a couple documents to the district. The thinnest of those documents is what we call a letter of necessary disclosures. Our required communications to you as the governing board of the school district. And we communicate several items within there. I'm just going to touch on what I believe are the most important items of that letter. Qualitative aspects of accounting practices. In there, we basically identify to you any material estimates that are included in your financial statements, as well as any newly implemented accounting standards or reporting standards. You'll notice that we have identified that the district did apply GASB 84 on fiduciary activities this year. Basically, what that required the district to do was reclassify a bunch of activity which was previously reported in agency funds, because it wasn't district funds, into special revenue funds of the district, because the district has custody of those assets, as well as administrative involvement in disbursement of those assets. So they came out of agency funds and went into special revenue funds at the district. Second item there, no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. As I mentioned before, your financial staff as well as your operational staff were very responsive to our requests, and were very easy to work with. Corrected misstatements. We did identify one prior period adjustment that was reflected in the financial statements, and it arose out of a question that Natalie brought to our attention before the audit even started. She had a question as to how the life insurance plan of the district was being accounted for. It previously was being accounted for as an other post-employment benefit, and an actuarial study was being done on that, and there was a rather significant liability being recorded in the district's financial statements related to the projected benefit of that program. Based on a review of the information available to the district, as well as discussions with the district's contact at the insurance company, it was determined that the plan is actually a fully insured plan where the district pays premiums for the individuals that are covered under that plan for the life insurance. And in return for paying those premiums, the life insurance company actually assumes the responsibility for paying any death benefits as a part of that program. So there's, after the premiums are paid by the district, there's really no further liability to the district for those benefits. As a result of that prior period adjustment, the district's net position was actually increased by approximately $6.6 million from the previous year. Disagreements with management, happy to share with you during the course of our audit, we had no disagreements with Natalie or Ross or other members of management at the district that we need to report. And I would even go so far as to say we had no disagreements. Management representations as a part of our audit prior to issuing the financial statements, your management is required to provide us with a letter. It's about 6 or 7 pages long, maybe even longer than that, and it's attached to this disclosure letter and identifies to you basically they are saying that they provided us with all information that we requested, all information that was pertinent to the audit, and that they are not aware of any legal issues outstanding that they haven't made us aware of, all of that kind of information. To the best of our knowledge, your management did not consult with other auditors on matters that may affect the opinion that that we provided on the financial statements. It's basically the highlights of the communication letter. If you want to flip to the next slide for me, internal controls. As a part of your audit, we're required to look at internal controls, not only around the financial statements, but also around the federal and state programs to determine that there are controls in place and that they are operating in the manner that they have been, in the manner that they have been represented to us by management and your grant individuals. pleased to share with you that based on our review of the internal controls and the testing that we performed, we've come to the conclusion that overall there's a positive control environment at the district. And it reflects the tone at the top of the organization. Everyone understands their roles and responsibilities, and they have a strong sense of doing what's right and maintaining the public's trust and as stewards of the taxpayers' money. All of our interactions with district staff really reinforce that they want to make sure that there's complete transparency there and that they want to do what's right, even, like in the case of correcting the life insurance issue, they wanted to make sure that the financial statements were correct, even though it was a large adjustment to the prior year's financial statement. Management continues to place a high importance on implementing and maintaining the internal controls, such as segregation of duties, making sure that individuals are appropriately cross-trained and that there's appropriate management oversight where it's needed. Lastly, regarding internal controls, we didn't identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses over internal controls as it relates to the financial statements or the federal and state programs that we tested during the current year. I'll now turn it over to Brian, and he'll give a quick run through of some of the information on the financial statements itself.
Okay, yep, thanks Rob. Once again, Brian Anderson, Senior Manager on the job. So I just want to kind of highlight a few things on the audit that or audited financial statements that might be of interest to you. I'm going to do this at a very high level since there's a lot here and we don't have time to go through everything, but just kind of want to highlight our opinion, which is there on page number 1. It basically indicates that management's responsible for the financial statements, and then we're responsible to design procedures and basically test to make sure the financial statements are materially stated. So on the bottom of page 1 there, our opinion, everything is fairly presented based on our testing. So obviously clean, unmodified opinion is a good thing. Let's see, it's kind of skimming through the financials if you have there in front of you. The management discussion analysis is kind of there to give a brief summary of the financial statements. And for you to read, there's a I guess you could advance the slide here. There is a statement of net position there on page 13, which that does include capital assets, all the long-term liabilities for other post-employment benefit, pension. It would have included the life insurance amount that Rob mentioned that we got rid of this year. It's more there for reference purposes only. You really don't use that too much in your day-to-day decision making. So it's there for reference purposes, as I mentioned, but really the financial statements are there on page 15 are really the ones that the district uses for their day-to-day decision makings, and maybe you should maybe pay a little bit more attention to with your budgeting purposes. So the general fund balance is really what the difference between all your assets, liabilities come to. So there's various categories there, non-spendable, meaning that they're in prepaid expense form or in inventory form. You really can't spend those. Restricted amounts, meaning they're restricted by grantors, creditors, or contributors. Assigned balances, meaning you've kind of designated or you have an intent for those to be used for future purposes. And then the unassigned amount is the residual amount of all the fund balances that can be spent on whatever you decide. So in the end, it's got those amounts that are broken out here. And the number to probably keep in mind is the $70 million that's unassigned that you have available. So if you want to advance to the next slide, we do just based on our experience with other school districts, and this is just kind of a rule of thumb, but we always like to compare school districts with what our recommendation is. And usually our recommendation for school districts is just to have about 2 months of general fund operating expenditures as your unassigned balance that kind of can make sure that you don't go bankrupt. You don't have to borrow quite as much on your short-term borrowing to get through to the next year. So did some calculations, and that unassigned balance of 70 million was about 17% of your total expenditures. So it does show, as I mentioned before, the importance of assigning amounts that really you're going to use for the future, as I mentioned on the previous page, and then just managing your fund balance. So I would say, yeah, Natalie and Ross and the team there does a really good job of making sure that is you're properly managing taxpayer monies and keeping that proper balance. So kudos to them. And like I said, you're just right on point with our recommendation, but I guess I would qualify this as just our recommendation. You could have more or less depending on other people's perspectives. So like I said, the financial statements are there. I mean, page 17 would have the changes in fund balances for the year. Obviously, the fund balance in the general fund did go up about 22 million, but a lot of that you did assign that for future periods, as you can rightly do. And then the capital projects, obviously that one went up a lot as you borrowed money on the referendum, and we'll be spending those in future periods. And then the other funds pretty much remain same, a slight increase in those funds. So I won't really dive too much more into the financial statements for our time here, but yeah, there's a lot there with all the pension information, the life insurance information through the local retiree life insurance plan, other post-employment benefits, supplemental pension. There's budget to actual schedules in there for your reference there on page 53 if you want to look at that. I think that's all I want to point out, the financial statements. There is another set of financial statements that we do include related to the single audit, and we're required to give opinions that you have proper internal control and proper compliance with those, with federal awards and all state grants, federal grants, and we're happy to report that there's no internal control issues or no compliance issues there. So that's for you to read for your reference. And then I guess the last bit of information here to share with you, if you want to advance to the next slide, is any new and upcoming pronouncements. So there's a few GASB pronouncements, governmental accounting standards boards, that will be in effect in future years, but the one that's most applicable and will require the most attention would be related to leases. And with this, and there's a lot to this, but the summary of it is your what leases you previously had recorded as operating leases are now going to be recorded on the balance sheet with a future commitment for those, along with any, I guess, an asset for the right to use those assets. So it might require an impact adding amounts to your balance sheet as kind of an asset and liability, and then kind of reclassifying the income statement amounts, some slight adjustments. I know Natalie's been doing a lot of research on this, and I'm sure she's well prepared to implement this standard. So kudos to her for being on top of that, and we'll just work with her to make sure make sure it's implemented. And I guess next year at this time we'll discuss the impact of that on the financial statements. So I guess with that, that's kind of a high level of how your audit went. And like I said, reiterate what Rob said, we appreciate all the cooperation with Natalie, Ross, and their staff. They do a great job, and it was great to work with them this first year. I know first year is never fun for anybody in an audit relationship, so we thank them for their cooperation, and we look forward to future years. So I guess with that, we'll open up for any questions anybody has.
Yeah, so I'll start us off. I am curious how our audit was impacted by the pandemic, particularly areas that have come up around teacher certification and licensure as a part of this audit process.
Yeah, I mean, I know that was a finding in prior year that that was a little hard to track, and I know Ruth and her team stays on top of that really well. And there was maybe some communication issues with DPI and the school district, but all of that was worked out before we started our procedure. DPI has this no valid license worksheet that they kind of work with the districts, all the districts, on implementing that. And I guess we're happy to report that Ruth worked with them, reclassified anybody that wasn't really licensed and wasn't able to be claimed as part of the state special education. So I guess if that answers your question, that issue from the prior year has been cleaned up. The district is well on top of that, and there wasn't any issues this year.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. I am wondering if a member of the MMSD staff would like to speak to how we've been able to navigate that differently than we did in prior years, and whether or not the pandemic has created, if any, difficulty in navigating that between the district and the Department of Public Instruction.
So a few years ago, when I first started with the district, I made it a point of communicating with DPI our frustrations with the ability of our staff to obtain valid licenses. They do all the paperwork, they submit the paperwork, and then it goes into a processing phase at the DPI level. And sometimes it takes a year. So my first year here, Ruth and I started really scrubbing through this list. So Ruth will have a process in which she takes everyone who is identified by DPI at the beginning of the year, which is what the problem is. They identify these individuals at the beginning of the year. Ruth will get them off of the special ed categorical aid. And then would just move them. What we've now done is taken that list and sent it back to DPI and said, what are you doing about it? How are you moving our people so that next year we're not looking at the same people being on the list? Last year, our problem really was that we had 2 individuals start with the district, actually never spent, and if you recall, they actually never spent time working with students. They were just doing onboarding and left, got reported to DPI at the beginning of the year when they started. And so they made that list. Ruth did not take them off the list because we thought they never got charged. So that's how we got caught last year. But this year we actually did a little, some additional procedures. But we are also working with DPI school finance and with licensing because of the frustrations we have with the size of the list that comes out every year, and the fact that it's created at the beginning of the school year, and by the end of the year, we have teachers who have licenses and their names are still on that list. So it's an ongoing process. And it is not unique to our school district, as Brian and Rob will tell you.
Thank you all so much for speaking to that question, and thank you for all the work that you've done to produce this audit and navigate, those types of issues to the benefit of the district. I greatly appreciate it. I also greatly appreciate the work you did to clarify our standing in terms of our life insurance. I think that's a really relevant development in terms of how we're looking at our audit. So thank you so much for the work of your team, Ross and Natalie. And I look forward to hearing my fellow board members' questions if there are any. Any other questions?
I really have to thank Brian and Rob for really doing the research on the life insurance policies. This has been a question that has been out there for at least 6-7 years, that we have revisited as the GASBs kept changing. This thing kept moving in its counting treatment requirements, and finally, I kind of had a fresh set of eyes with new auditors to say, please look at this. There's too many questions, and they came up with the right answers.
Thank you so much for speaking to that, Natalie. Board Member Carusi.
Thank you, President Muldrow. Rob and Brian, thank you so much for this presentation. We really appreciate your coming here and explaining the audit to us. I just want to make a shout out to Natalie and Ross and your team. We had no material weaknesses or deficiencies identified this year, and that is thanks to your amazing work. So, I can't thank you enough for what you've put into helping make sure that financially our district is in sound shape. I also just want to note that given the fact that our fund balance is in excess of our policy, we do need to include fund balance in conversations about our budget in the coming year. So just noting that. That's all my comments.
Board Member Morelli?
Yeah, thank you so much, Board Member Carusi, for elevating the fund balance access. I also had a question regarding how do we navigated health insurance, and what are you all seeing the role of health insurance in the years to come? Specifically, it was already in a I guess, unpredictable place before COVID, and I'm expecting to continue to be in this unpredictable, it may be even worse for the future. But I'm curious of how are you all navigating that fluctuation?
Ross, did you want to cover that?
Sure. So, I mean, and I believe you're referring to future years and what we're going to navigate for insurance premiums. And we currently do have, to my understanding, a multi-year agreement with our providers to have rate caps in place for the next couple of years. I don't have that year range in my head at the moment. Perhaps Tracy would be able to speak to that if she's present. But we definitely have noticed for the past several years in our trending that we're spending more dollars than we are collecting in premiums on an insured basis. So with COVID, we all know that we didn't get free healthcare. We may have gotten free vaccines, we didn't get free healthcare. So I fully expect this next several years for there to be significant upward pressure in not only healthcare, but healthcare costs to all employers. So it is something we're going to have to be keeping an eye on when the sunset of our rate cap agreement with these providers does come to fruition.
Yeah, I think that's such a timely conversation. In particular, we were speaking earlier around the need of mental health and our gaps in mental health. And I would argue that, it was too experiencing high demand on any healthcare provider. And I do think, Ross, I think we're having like another couple years, if I'm not mistaken, of cap, but I'm anticipating that this is going to be a continued conversations in budgetary conversations and moving forward.
Thank you, Board Member Morelli. Board Member Vandermeulen?
Yes, just for the record. Agree with Ananda on the health insurance decision. Legally, we aren't noticed on that, so I just want to make sure that we don't have any open meetings penalties, so that's why I'm calling it out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anyone is speaking, but we can't hear you.
My apologies. I was just asking if there were any further questions.
Okay.
I believe there are none, so we're going to move on. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and thank you for all the work you did to produce the audit.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think Dr. Carlton has a question.
Dr.
Yeah.
Jenkins, thank you. Thank you so much for pointing that out to me.
Sorry, I'm about to change my hand up there, but that's okay. Hey, I had a question for the auditors, and as we're thinking about the recent decision with the Joint Finance Committee and the budget, and as we're looking at ending this year, are you advising anyone moving in to future years with that consideration of fund balances? Because I know right now we're right where you pretty much recommend or slightly above that, but are you asking everyone to be cautious about that fund balance because we're getting less dollars coming in the future?
I'll take a first crack at that, Brian. I always advise my not only school district clients, but all of my governmental clients, because I work with technical colleges, cities, counties, all of that, to be a little bullish on their fund balance, even though it may seem a little bit higher, especially in these times of uncertainty with the way that the state government is handling any increases or, anything with the funding that they've been providing to governmental entities. So my guidance would be, even if you're a little bit higher than what your policy may say, consider moving some of, especially in light of the discussion that you've had around potential health insurance increases in the next few years. Consider assigning a portion of that fund balance to be set aside for those increases that that are coming, or for any decreases that the state may be looking at providing in their funding formulas, or unfunded mandates that may be coming down the pipeline as well. Because we know that the state government is great for putting new requirements out there and then saying you have to find the dollars to be able to meet those mandates. So, even though it seems like it's just a little bit over that, I guess I wouldn't get overly concerned and either look at, giving that back or spending it down for purposes that you may need it in the future. That's the way that I would advise you.
Can I add to this? So when I was an auditor, I used to give this a very similar presentation, and we always recommended 16% is pretty much an industry standard across the boards. And really where this comes from is how long can you continue to operate if for some reason there was a holdup at the state level with your funding. And we like to say we're always going to get our equalization aid, or we're always going to get our tax levies. But we did see last year where the state was going to allow municipalities not to pay the tax levy, the August tax levy on time. We would have gotten that August levy, moved back to September, and a lot of municipalities did that. We were very lucky that the city of Madison chose not to do that. Okay, Dane County chose not to hold that up. We were very fortunate with that because a lot of other municipalities did, a lot of other school districts did have their August certification held up. The other thing is in the event of a issue at the federal government, they will, for example, if the federal government shuts down, when they do that, there are no payments that goes out. So there have been years when I was back at DPI even where Title I payments did not go out. So I'm not trying, or when the equalization aid certification was held up at the state level. So this has happened in the past where the school districts did not get their funding. So that's where that 16% comes from. It's not a random amount that they're recommending. And it did come into play when the school district did set its fund balance policies. Originally was what is the recommended amounts for school districts to have on hand in order to continue to operate. But that's where, auditors look at that number, and that's where they feel comfortable with.
Thank you both. Rob, that's what I want to know, what you were advising others to do during this time, because it's really uncertain, particularly given this last budget that was approved. And I know we're going to be thinking down the road. So thank you so much. Thank you too, Natalie, for adding to that as well. It's great to have our team in-house that we have. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. All right. I want to read the next motion, but I think that there might be a typo. So I just want to ask about the amount.
I think Ms. Marilli has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ananda.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob and Brian, and thank you so much, Natalie and Ross, for navigating a really interesting and challenging year. I'm wondering, and you, Rob, begin touching this a little bit in your latest comment around what are some of the risks that you're seeing with this influx of one-time spending coming out to different school districts across the state? What are some of the things for myself and my colleagues to be in a lookout in regards to budgetary decisions? I know Dr. Jenkins and the team have been really clear and adamant around what is one-time resources that we're receiving or have been receiving and will receive, and what is long-term. But I'm curious, with your expertise, what are some of the things that you're seeing in the field to caution school districts as we're negotiating the next 2-3 years of still in a pandemic, still with like very specific needs, still with a lot of gaps around different types of services?
I would echo the sentiments of Dr. Jenkins and your finance team, is to make sure and look at the expenditures that you are undertaking with those grant funds as being, okay, these are improvements that we are either making to the facilities or equipment that was needed, and the district is now able to fund those needs because of these additional grant dollars. What you don't want to do, and it doesn't sound like the district is doing, is you don't want to use it to start programming that's going to be there year over year that you're going to have to either support with district dollars that you currently don't have, or that you may need to take away from other programming that you're currently providing. So that's the balancing act for most municipalities is, yes, these are additional dollars to be used, but you want to make sure that you're using them on items that the district actually needs and will utilize in the future. And I think the discussion that was held around a number of the large capital purchases, such as, okay, are these purchases going to be able to be utilized in the future, even after COVID is done, and we don't have to have the students 6 feet apart? Are they still going to be useful and be able to be utilized? I think that right there shows you that the school board, as well as the management team, is looking at the use of these dollars in the right mindset. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Oh, yeah. And I think we had a glimpse of that before, but I really appreciate having an external partner to really explain that to us and then add additional language. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions for our auditors or Ross and the team? All right, moving on. Item 14.1, notice of disallowance. I move that the Board of Education disallow a claim on behalf of a minor child and their parent under Wisconsin statute 893.80, and said claim alleging liability-based negligence by the district and district personnel. Any discussion? Nama, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. And I will be recusing myself from the next item, and Board Member Castro or Vice President Castro will be chairing us through that discussion.
Thank you so much, Board President Muldrow. And so for this next discussion item, we'll be talking about temporary bonus incentives for select staff. I move that the Board of Education approve the temporary bonus incentives for teachers, substitute teachers, special education assistants, substitute special education assistants, nurses, nursing assistants, and school security assistants as set forth in the document prepared for the November 2021 regular meeting using the 2021-2022 Fund 10 general operating budget. Can I please get a second?
Second, Nikki Vandermeulen.
Second.
And may I comment?
1 moment. And so now it's open for discussion. Board Member Vandermeulen.
Yes, I was very happy to see this on the agenda, although it came in an unorthodox way. I think we have a crisis with our subs and not having enough. And I'm hearing and seeing in the schools that I've visited of teachers who are like, I'm doing the best I can, but now I'm trying to cover other classes as well. And it's a lot of burned out teachers, a lot of very stressed out special ed aides who may have the hardest job next to the security agents in the building because they're constantly moving. And so I really think that this is part of the thing that ESSER is designed for. We can't do this all the time, and I get that. We're lucky that we are in this position now that we can, and I think we need to, or we're going to have more troubles in the schools because our teachers are going to wear out. They're going to not be able to continue to handle it. And we want to attract more teachers. We want teachers of color. We want Black and brown teachers. We want teachers with both physical, emotional disabilities. We want every group. And we're not going to get that if we don't keep with the standards of our area. And our base pay is one thing, but our sub pay is under right now, and that needs to be fixed.
Got it. Thank you, Board Member Vandermeulen. Any other discussion or questions? Board Member Carusi, followed by Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Thank you, Board Vice President Castro. My first question is for Ross. So this topic did not come up in operations work group, so we haven't really had a chance to dig into it. And Ross, I was wondering if you could talk about a couple things. First of all, how we're going to pay for this, where this is going to come out of our budget. Secondly, the feasibility of this paying for this and having it fit within our budget through the end of this fiscal year. And third, there's the question of like, we pay bonuses now, and then we potentially have to take things away. Like one of my concerns here is like, particularly for our teachers, if we increase their pay for covering, using their planning time to cover for their peers. And then starting in July, we can't afford to do that anymore. And we go back to $22 instead of their actual pay rate. What message does that send to our teachers? And at the same time, can we actually sustain paying the higher rate? I guess I would extend that to all of the things that we're proposing here, but in particular, I'm concerned about that one. So three things, how we're going to pay for this now, the feasibility through June, and then just some thoughts about longer term sustainability about, continuing this funding or cutting off this funding.
Sure. So first things first, we are recognizing that we have a crisis in staffing right now in many areas. And if the first question foremost is affordability of this, I can assure the board that what we're presenting tonight is not a way to spend through and above what we are currently able to afford in the current budget year. We have approximately over 100 staff, 100 FTE identified in the staffing plan right now that are unfilled and have been remaining unfilled since the start of the fiscal year. It's the reality of the positions we're having trouble filling right now. In addition, we know that we're having difficulty obtaining and retaining subs right now for the same reasons that many of our teaching staff are hurting right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of trouble right now. And this proposal is a way to acknowledge that COVID wasn't just a last year thing. We're still trying to climb out of it and get back to a more realistic way of continuing working. So again, over 100 positions right now are still currently vacant and generating savings within the current year budget. Additionally, because our sub fill rate is as low as it is, our sub budget spending is actually low as well. So when we talk about providing these bonuses as they're outlined in this memo, I have every reason to think that even under this structure, we will be well within our budget authority with what we've already put forward. To Chris's last point there about sustainability going into future years, it is certainly something, as we're talking about the planning time discussion for teachers, that we can bring up in handbook discussions. Again, though, we don't want to just make this a acknowledgement of subs that we need to address here. We're trying to be humane in that we know that a lot of teachers are losing a lot more planning time than they otherwise would because we can't get the subs to cover those same classes. So what used to be a thank you and an ability for someone to step over and cover a class, we're now saying this is happening more than it should. And for this year, we want to acknowledge that by extending it up to their contract rate for those hours they're covering. Beyond that, we are acknowledging now that any attempt to reset the rates we've been using for years and adjusting through the handbook is going to be kind of jarring when we get back to it. We're going to have that discussion again when it comes to our summer school deliberations this year. I don't anticipate that we're going to revert immediately, but that discussion still needs to be part of our budget discussion, right? So as we look at taking these rates back to what's currently in the handbook for class coverage and our substitute daily rate, we certainly will be discussing with the board and internally what types of rates we need to sustain going forward to be humane and thinking forward.
Thank you, Ross. And I just have one follow-up question, and that is regarding specifically the first bullet point, which is the bonus that would be paid to substitute teachers. The bonus is only available to subs if they have perfect attendance, and it's $500 a month for a 20-day month, which comes to, I think, $25 a day. So my thought is that many people sub for this district because they want some flexibility, like maybe they don't want to work every day. So if a sub doesn't actually work every day, they don't get this bonus. And secondly, is $25 a day an adequate amount to make us competitive relative to our neighboring districts when we're trying to attract subs?
So first thing is our daily rate for subs is by no means lower than our neighbors as far as being competitive. The bonus is simply a way to acknowledge and give ability for us to thank those subs for doing outstanding work and covering way more than their fair share. So I don't think it's a matter of a daily rate. It's a bonus based on the appreciation of their work within the district. Since you brought it up, Chris, I do want to point out that in months where it would be physically impossible to work 20 days in a given month due to either a calendar or a holiday. For example, December, it's not possible to work 20 days because we have the Christmas and New Year's holidays following on 2 Thursday, Friday situations. So in those cases, we'd be looking at that perfect attendance threshold and not a hard 20-day cap.
Thank you. I think this raises the point also that especially for subs who aren't going to be working every day, we need to look at non-monetary incentives to thank people for the time that they're spending in this district, and also make it easier for people to get hired and for people to work as subs in MMSD. So that's all my comments.
Chris, real quick, I agree with that. The one thing we have to be careful of is when we provide non-monetary incentives, we have to be careful. We're following IRS guidelines for compensation, because if we do give compensation in lieu of or other compensation, it may actually end up being taxable income based on the value of what we provide. But I agree with the sentiment, what you're saying. We can certainly explore that.
And actually, to clarify what I meant by non-monetary incentives was just like making working conditions better, things like making sure that the subfolders are like great and in good condition and make it really easy for people to step in and work. So
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, followed by Board Member Morelli. Then I'm going to add myself to the queue.
Great, thank you, Board Member Castro. Thank you, Ross, for clarifying. I had questions around where the funding for this was coming from as well. And so basically what I understand is the funding for this is basically going to offset with positions that haven't been hired yet. And we are still hoping to hire. But I agree, this is really important and urgent that we address this. And had the shortage of subs that we're seeing across the state, across our city, county, it's really urgent for being able to meet the needs of students and not burn out the staff that we have. So I really appreciate this proposal coming forward. I guess I was hoping before we launched into a discussion and questions, if we could hear from our interim director of human resources, just like a brief summary of how this fits into the overall HR planning and work that's going on. Is Tracy here? Or Dr. Jenkins? Dr. Jenkins, you're on mute.
Okay, we'll have Ms. Carradine speak to it, and then I can add to it if she leaves anything out. But she's been working collaboratively with us.
Okay, so this does fit into our plan. What we're looking at is expanding our sub pool. Just this year, we've added permit subs. So if you have an associate's degree, that's something new. Before it was just certified, but now we're adding permit subs. We're looking at going into the schools and looking at our nursing assistant positions for the subs. I'm looking at our students who have CNA licensure or who are getting certified in CNA. We're looking at doing more recruitment that way. We have a recruitment fair coming up in December for our student teachers that will be graduating in December and some that are graduating in the spring. So we are looking at hiring that way. And I just want to say that, Ross, thank you very much for your overview. Just to kind of give you a snapshot, we had 40 subs who worked 20 days or more. So for the month of September, we had 26 who worked 20 plus days. And in October, we had 22 who worked 20 plus days. So altogether, there were 40 subs that did hit that threshold.
Now, as we're talking about this, Ms. Carradine, could you also share about what percentage of staff, how many in different areas that this proposal would impact?
Yes, so we have 30 SSAs. We have 433 special ed assistants, and this is district-wide. We have 67 nurses. We have 43 nurses, assistants, 2 that are bilingual, so a total of 45. We have the number of secondary teachers. This goes along with that last bullet point about teachers giving up prep time. There are 687 secondary teachers. We have 163 educational assistants. And for the number of substitute teachers who are actively working, we have 230. We have 49 substitute special ed assistants and 17 substitute clerical. So that's a total of 1,721. And so if you round our employee number to 5,400, that's about a third of our employees. So we're talking like 31.87%. So a third. Just trying to see what other. So yeah, so out of that, and remember the subs that I said, the sub teachers who work 20 plus days, just to kind of give you a breakdown, I told you it was a total of 40. Well, of that 40, 14 were permit subs, meaning they had an associate's or higher. And then the 26 were certified sub teachers who have a degree in education, a bachelor's degree in education.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure I reinforce, thank you so much for that too, Ms. Carradine and Ross, both. About 2 weeks ago, I completed my tour of the district and having gone to all the schools at least once. This is a common theme out there from our SEAs to our teachers, our SAs, various individuals. They're really tired. And we do know having our frontline teachers not be so tired and subbing so much, we need to do whatever we can to address this. And so in meeting with some of the staff in the various schools, that was something that they had said, if we could get more subs in, it would be greatly appreciated. Also, if we could show them value for when they do sub at $22, they would greatly appreciate it. This is just a time, and it did come unusual because we normally would go through operations, but just listening to our staff, we're trying to respond to that and pivot as needed. So that's kind of where we are. But I thank you for taking this proposal even to this meeting tonight, and looking for the support so we can move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, and thank you, Ms. Carradine, for the extra information there. I really appreciate that. And then just one last question for Ross. I know we can't exactly put a total number on this because it's all going to flex with how many subs we need, right? And how many positions we need to fill. But do you have any ballpark figure that you can give us?
I've been doing some rough cut numbers, so while I wouldn't quote me on this, I would say that we could be looking at about $500,000 a month on identification of this. Again, depending on usage and how many days in a given month, we would be addressing those subs. But within the positions we've already discussed tonight, 100 positions, even if I'll do some rough math here on screen here, 100 positions at roughly $80,000 per, that's approximately $8 million. So if we only include that in the idea of what's currently open at the moment, even if we don't keep all of those positions I mentioned before open all year, there are certainly savings being generated that we can start to use to pay for this type of bonus program.
And Ross, could you also go ahead and speak to how much we budget for subs anyway?
That's correct. So we budget approximately $5 million annually for all daily subs and across substitute teachers and EA/SEA group. Based on our spending through October, our spending is still well below our time period 2 years ago, which was the first half of the 1920 school year before COVID. So we're already experiencing a significantly lower level of sub spending at this point in the year.
Great. Thank you so much for that clarification. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Board Member Carusi, or Board Member Murilli.
Thank you so much, Vice President Castro. Thank you so much, Ross and the team. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for bringing this to our attention. And thank you so much, Ms. Carradine, for, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. I'm really sorry. Yeah. For also making sure you're playing, you're watching and looking and monitoring the data around this, make sure that this has happened. I think this is one of those most beautiful targeted equity strategies that have come to our attention. I think it really speaks to the flexibility and the sharpness of this district around making sure not only we are addressing the human needs of staff and a professional role that has experienced an extreme challenge over this past couple of years, but also to address that in a very meaningful way. And I really sincerely appreciate all the work put into this. Thank you for sharing the numbers with us. I would also, my only addition, and it's not to say, that is, I'm here to just say, like, just consider something else. Another professional role that has been put under a lot of stress due to the global pandemic, but has often are not always visible, is our bilingual resource staff. They are the ones that make sure that every communication that this district has to put out around COVID, around schools closing, around what's happening in our schools, they are the ones that are often working extra hours to make sure that our families and students are receiving those communications. And it's not always perfect, and it's not always as timely as we can be, but they tried their best. So I would recommend that we look at further allocation. I know a lot of them do overtime, So whether it's a communication around overtime, whether it's a communication around bonus for them, I would appreciate that conversation. The only other addition that I would add is I understood around the perfect attendance. I would hope that we do a brief exercise around the equity implications of that, the unintended consequences of that, and if a staff is if a sub or a staff is not having that perfect attendance, what are some of the reasons? And I'm thinking 2 reasons in particular that would negatively impact most vulnerable staff. One is, or just any staff, one being observance of religious and spiritual holidays outside of the ones that we have on our calendar. And the other one is COVID and COVID related and COVID care. So I would love for the team to consider those 2 points. But again, I'm really grateful for this conversation. I'm sending it back to you, Vice President Castro.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just want to say that, public education across the country is experiencing the staffing crisis. And so I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and urgency from the team in terms of putting this together. It's what we can do now. It certainly cannot be the last thing that we do to address this need, and certainly hope that this crisis receives attention from the federal and state government. Also want to echo what Board Member Carusi mentioned about we have to consider all things on the table to let our staff know that we are that we're trying to care for people. I also just wanted to point out that, while a lot of our discussion has focused on subs, this also includes our SSAs and SEAs, which is our most diverse staffing unit, our units with our most Black and brown staff people. And that's always worth mentioning because, those folks are unfortunately the least paid in our district. And so we really have to pay special attention to that. And as we go into our next budget cycle, I know in our last budget cycle, we increased pay for SSAs, but it's not enough, and we got to keep doing more to show our support for those individuals in our district. I would like to put 2 friendly amendments on the table. One in terms of removing the perfect attendance requirement. I don't know if I want to do a percentage, because I was thinking 90%. But if it's on average 20-day work month, what does 1 day off amount to? So yeah, we got to do that math. And then also want to consider adding bilingual staff to this as well, because that's also a crisis in public education right now too. So I will, I got to think about how I add that to the table. I move that we amend the perfect attendance requirement. I'm trying to think about the percent number. Let's say 85%. So I move that we remove the perfect attendance requirement to 85% attendance. And I also, can I please get a second for that? Okay. And I hope this would be friendly, but any discussion?
Yeah, so I don't know if Chris.
I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. Board Member Carusi, followed by Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
So I would like to acknowledge that I like getting away from perfect attendance. Nobody's perfect. People have things come up in their lives, and the idea is to try to thank our staff for the work they're doing without putting requirements of perfection up there. So I also accept your friendly amendment. But a broader thing I just want us all to think about as we're considering passing both this motion and the amendment is I really appreciate the comments about how this is going to affect our most vulnerable staff. And we're also moving into a budget year next year that's going to be brutal. It's going to be very, very difficult to compensate any of our staff the way that we want to in the next budget year. And that includes sustaining what we're passing tonight beyond the end of the year, assuming that our staffing resumes normal levels next year. So in some ways, we have to make sure it's really clear that this is short-term crisis funding. And I worry a little bit about taking short-term benefits away from some of our lowest paid and most vulnerable staff in June. And at the same time, we're entering into a budget situation where it's going to be very difficult to continue those unless the state or the federal government jumps in and says they're going to help school districts more than they're doing right now. So I just think we have to keep in mind that approving this, it's a short-term fix. It's not going to be a long-term way of like really thanking staff and raising the living standards of staff who deserve to have those things raised. And it's going to be very difficult to continue these changes in the coming fiscal year when the state budget situation is so bad. So I don't want to put a damper on these things. I deeply believe in paying our staff, and I think we do need to address the crisis right now. And I think we also need to make it very clear that this is a temporary fix. So.
Thank you, Board Member Carusi. Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, followed by Board Member Morelli.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Carusi. I think that's a really good point, that these have to be temporary fixes as we try to navigate this pandemic and navigate our staffing shortage. My question was around the friendly amendment, and I'm just wondering if somebody could explain why the 100% attendance was in there, and what Dr. Jenkins, I guess, you would recommend setting it at if we're going to change it.
Well, I could speak to the 100%. That was totally me. Some of the team members had asked that it'd be a little bit less, and I'm trying to make sure that we have our staff not subbing when it comes to the teacher part, and we're talking about 20 days. And so I didn't want to necessarily put forth something that wasn't the expectation that was going to be counterproductive if we, but I was also, it was also shared with me by some of the staff, because like I said, I talked to the staff, teachers and SEAs and others, and it came up, but it was also like, we know that we don't want to put a bar so low that for the few who takes advantage of that, we really want to have a healthy staff in front of our students every day at whatever level and recognize those individuals. It's so many going above and beyond. And I guess perhaps it was me playing to the few that that we need them there, bottom line. And so that was on me, totally. But I am open if, I would definitely want to go back and see the feasibility if we're lowering that, because I had counted out for what it would be if we had the 100%. Now, what's the impact if we drop that, if we have subs and we have more subs and our people out, and we're going back to people having to sub again to teachers. So it's all of that thinking. It just wasn't a cut dry 100%. It was like, how can we lessen the burden? But if we having a lot of subs still in the building, that means teachers are going to be working to sub as well. And for the other group, I just try to keep it at an even level there. But I am open to it. I see the humane side of it in terms of things do come up. Someone mentioned even someone's children getting anything can happen to any one of us. So there's no such thing as perfect. So you don't have to be perfect. So I am totally open to that.
Yeah, thank you. And, we definitely always want to have an eye on internal mechanisms for accountability and avoid any system gaming. Board Member Morelli. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to see Ross had put his hand up. So I was just wondering if that was in response to what we were discussing.
It was. I just wanted to clarify that the memo does indicate that we would exclude from perfect attendance things like holidays. So someone mentioned non-calendar holidays. So that we did attempt to address that there, although it might have been a bit not as explanatory as we could have been. Also, that we would allow exceptions for any absences related to COVID-19 directly. So if there was someone out on either quarantine or testing or whatever, those days would not be considered part of the perfect attendance detraction.
Thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
Board Member Marilli.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Roz. My question was to you as well around dropping I totally understood Dr. Jenkins, that 100% is also like not just a gratitude, but also as incentive to make sure that our full-time staff have the flexibility to take care of their family and to do what they need to do. So I understood the sentiment of the 100%. I'm in support of Vice President Castro to move to the 85%. I'm just curious, Ross, what does that mean for us financially? Is that a world that you have thought about?
I definitely don't have numbers to address that specific question, but it certainly would have a higher fiscal impact. I wouldn't say it's going to cause significant stress on the proposal itself, but it certainly will increase the cost as we see it develop at that threshold.
Thank you so much. And I want to also to address some of the comments around, the challenges of the budget. We've been having challenge of the budget for over a decade. We know that is true. We know that's fact. And we know we're going to have another one next year, but that shouldn't preclude us from utilizing funding that is available right now, in particular to the staff that comprise the largest unit of staff of color in our district, and the ones that have been dramatically impacted by the global pandemic. So I want to make sure that when we are speaking to our staff and to our educators, that we're speaking about holistically when we fight for fair wages, that we're fighting for fair wages for everyone, and also recognizing that we're still a long ways to go, in particular around the units listed in those bullet points.
Thank you. Board Member Carusi.
Thanks. I just have a question for Ross. If we were to, with this friendly amendment on the table to reduce the attendance to 85%, also if we were to include other groups in this plan, such as bilingual teachers, do we need to table this and give you some time to do a fiscal analysis to make sure that we can afford it?
Well, if we're going to discuss about bilingual staff, we need to clarify what actually meant by that, because the concept of class covered at secondary may not apply in those circumstances based on the last bullet point in the memo. So we need to propose an entirely new structure for what that staff would mean. Again, this is mostly concerned around on sub coverage. So if we're branching outside of the idea of addressing coverage and subs throughout the district, it might need to be a separate proposal entirely, but I'll certainly defer to Dr. Jenkins if he has thoughts on how we could address that issue.
Yeah, one of the things I think, and yeah, I always want to be equitable, but I'm talking about right here, right now. I would prefer to go with this and get busy tonight, tomorrow, in terms of looking at the bilingual. I think that is great. I just missed it in there because I know when I'm going out and they're always doing the translations for us and things of this nature and working above and beyond. But let's just get on it right tomorrow. And I think between our team, we can come up with something for you and be ready for our December the 6th meeting for sure. But the other ones, I wouldn't want to hold back on that right now. But just know that we will bring the other one back to you.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not mute. I need to unmute. Ross, what about the 85% attendance? Would we need to put this proposal on hold to do an analysis of that as well?
No, I wouldn't say that we'd need to table the entire discussion to move forward on this. It's certainly, as I mentioned to Ananda, it will have an upward pressure on the cost that we address, but again, based on the positions that are currently vacant, I don't think it's going to cause enough pressure to be a cause for alarm.
So I just want to make sure you're saying not to pause on the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need to pause at this point. I think we can move forward if board members are amenable.
Right.
Thank you. So I saw Board Member Vandermolen, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, then I'm going to call the vote.
I was just going to say, call the question.
Got it. Okay, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, right quick, then I'm going to call the vote.
Yeah, my question was just if we're getting to that 20 day threshold and you take 1 day away, 19 out of 20 is like 95%. Is that, I'm just wondering what the 85% calculation is based off of.
It's going to be like 3 days roughly that they'll be able to have. Yep. On a 20-day.
Yeah, I'm just asking if my calculation is right.
So if you take November as an example, November is an example of a 30-day month where we have exactly 22 possible days in a month where we could have school and could have potentially subs. Now, if we subtract out the Thanksgiving days, Thursday, Friday of this week, that gets you back to 20. In a 30-day month where there's not paid holidays or other holidays we need to recognize, you could have the potential for up to about 22, 23 max, depending on how the weekends fall, that would be applicable to that policy. So if you're basing it on a 20-day threshold, 85% would be 17 days.
All right.
Yeah,
so-
I guess I'm
ahead.
just asking what the threshold should be, like day wise.
Just procedure, point of order, call the vote is already on the table. We should move that forward, please.
Yeah, so I'm comfortable voting. Do any other board members want to have a conversation about that 85% threshold?
Actually, I would. I'd like to know the calculation.
Okay,
And we have to have the conversation. I believe everyone's voice should count.
okay, so any other comment about the threshold?
Yes, Ross, so my math stinks and I'm not a math major. But my question is that, would that be like 3.5 days or is it 3 days? I'm not great at math.
So if we base that on 20 days and we take 85% of that, that gets you exactly 17 days. So it'd be a 3-day difference in the threshold that's in the current proposal.
I appreciate that because I was a little lost. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Any other board members want to change the threshold or? All right, Nama, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All right, all those in favor? Board Member Marilli, are you there? All right, all those opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. And so there is no old and new business, but before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I just wanted to give our superintendent, Dr. Jenkins, a very, very happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I would sing Stevie Wonder to you, but it's darn near past midnight. But happy birthday to you, and we really appreciate and love you. And again, I appreciate all the work you do for the district and the love you put into this work.
Happy birthday.
Happy
birthday,
Dr. Jenkins. Happy birthday.
Babies are the best.
Super cool.
Happy birthday. All right, may I please get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
so much,
night.
Barb.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.